Good afternoon, and welcome to our celebration of the life of Alex Pines. I am hoping to welcome the whole self of you here today, your extrovert self, ready to engage everyone, your introvert self, ready to reflect on music and art, your grieving self, ready to remember, and your joyous self, ready to hug friends from years past. But first and most important, would you join me in giving a warm and loving affirmation to Dietza and her family? So what is the measure of a man? Albert Schweitzer wrote, and I quote, "The full measure of a man is not to be found in the man himself, but in the colors and textures that come alive in others because of him." Schweitzer writes, "The only thing of importance when we depart will be the traces of love we have left behind." These words strike me profoundly. I was next door to Alex for 42 years, sharing students and postdocs, group meetings, parties, committees, grants, startups, and struggles with the slings and arrows of outrageous bureaucracy. Reflecting on all these years, Alex's company effused the full spectrum of colors of life, and thereby enriched mine, and I suspect yours. Do you recall, by any chance, moments when, as if by some Hogwartian magic, Alex occupied the whole room? I recall a time when Alex and I were seeking to launch an imaging company. And towards that end, we arranged to meet the head of neurosurgery at a large medical school, a person we had never met before. As we were ushered into the office, Alex spoke. And from that moment on, we had his full attention, and in 15 minutes, we have his support and blessings to further our company. I'm reminded of a poem by Maya Angelou that perfectly fits Alex, and it goes like this. "In the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips, I am a man phenomenally." As you know, Alex was the winner of this Distinguished Teaching Award, Berkeley's highest honor bestowed to its campus for teaching. You were probably thinking of Alex in his black t-shirt engaging students in introductory chemistry, students that strolled into the classroom to Glenn Gould's brilliant piano, as you did today as you came in. But the distinguished teacher I recall crafted course content like a chess master. Indeed, I was asked at one point in my career to persuade the PChem committee to further instructions in topics of classical physical chemistry, topics that were highly engaging to chemie undergrads. So I joined the PChem committee with Alex Pines and David Chandler. Laughter, please. I was ready with my arguments in defense of the status quo. But by the time the meeting was over, I was fully committed to the new physical chemistry, courses based strictly on statistical and quantum mechanics, a complete abrogation of my assigned duty to be a keeper of the old faith. How could I have become such a traitor? And the answer was I was under Alex's spell, his amazing intellect that knew chemistry and knew how to craft course content so that students would learn for the future, not learn for the past. There have been hints over the years that scholarship in the field of magnetic resonance was at an end, that it no longer, that it had evolved into an application tool and no longer captivated great minds. Yet year after year, each student and postdoc confronted the mathematical mind of Alex that saw topology, algebra, phase, statistic, information as an intricate web of new knowledge with gleaming dewdrops of opportunity for his colleagues to sip. Alex was keenly aware that a refresh of the fundamentals was the place to start, embodying words from a poem by T.S. Eliot, and I quote, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive at the place we started and know the place for the first time." The great religious texts of the world are filled with stories of hospitality, of opening one's home to the traveler, the stranger, the seeker in need of warmth and welcome. In this spirit, Alex and Dietza transformed their home into a sanctuary of generosity. Yet each Pines Fest was more than a dinner party, wasn't it? The way the two of them moved about the room, anticipated needs, exchanged knowing glances, and delighted in their guests' enjoyment. They revealed a quiet depth of devotion to each other that emanated a space where people felt at home. Isn't that a space we all need? Well, today, as we gather to share our memories of Alex, there's a risk that we may drift toward the melancholy, dwelling on endings rather than the boundless spirit that he embodied. Of course, that's a disservice to Alex, isn't it? And all that he stood for. After all, do we not share his passion for the infinite beauty of the natural world? Do we not share his deep resonance with music and art, his unyielding joy in the pursuit of understanding? Of course we do. And so I choose to think of Alex not in sorrow, but in wonder, just as Yeats envisioned in his verse about the wandering Angus. In Yeats's closing lines, I see Alex then, reaching, forever seeking, as he plucks till time and times are done, the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Doug Clark, Dean of the College of Chemistry, and I would like to thank all of you for coming together today to honor and remember our beloved colleague, mentor, and friend, Alex Pines, about whom Jeff just spoke so eloquently. I'll begin with a few words about Alex's background. Alex was born in Tel Aviv and grew up in Rhodesia, present-day Zimbabwe, where his lifelong passion for science, chess, music, and the arts was fostered. At the age of 16, he moved to Israel, and after completing his education in an agricultural high school, he went on to study mathematics and chemistry at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, graduating with a bachelor's degree in 1967. His interest in the chemical sciences grew even more deeply after reading Linus Pauling's seminal book, The Nature of the Chemical Bond, which prompted him to pursue a doctoral degree in chemistry. In 1968, Alex relocated again and began his graduate studies at MIT in the research group of Joseph Waugh, one of the foremost experts in nuclear magnetic resonance at the time. Together with Waugh, Alex demonstrated the first Luke-Schmidt-Diemann cross-polarization of carbon-13, thereby launching the modern era of solid-state NMR. He earned his PhD in chemical physics in 1972 and then joined the Berkeley faculty as an assistant professor that same year. An amusing story that I'm fond of telling in recent years is about how Alex's lab got started at Berkeley. When he came in 1972, he didn't have any startup funds or a lab assigned to him. And that was unusual even by the standards of 1972. Well, Alex being Alex, he started building and modifying surplus NMR equipment himself to get his research program up and running. And this was all taking place in the corridors of Hildebrandt Hall. One day, his chemistry colleague, Ken Pisser, was walking by and saw Alex working in the corridor and asked, "What are you doing here?" After the explanation, Pisser was incredulous. And he then immediately sought out then Dean David Templeton and promptly led him to Alex's spot in the corridor and told Alex, "The dean is going to give you a laboratory right now." And that is exactly what the dean did. And that was pretty much the starting point for Alex to establish a full lab at Berkeley, and the rest is truly history. Among his multitude of talents and interests, Alex was, of course, a pioneer in the development and application of NMR spectroscopy. His scientific accomplishments, described in over 500 papers and over 25 patents, include a list of seemingly impossible experiments, such as selective multiple quantum NMR, zero field NMR, a demonstration of Wilczek's non-abelian generalization of Berry's phase, and remote optical hyperpolarization and detection of NMR and MRI on microfluidic chips. If these achievements sound like they've been lifted from the pages of science fiction, that's because Alex made the impossible possible. And through the art and practice of chemistry and the unity of knowledge, he laid the groundwork for many more advances yet to come. In 2023, thanks to a very generous philanthropic investment, the Pines Magnetic Resonance Center was launched in his honor in the College of Chemistry, just steps away from the location of his encounter with Ken Pitzer and David Templeton 50 years prior. Alex was, of course, a member of several scientific honor societies and received numerous prestigious awards, including the celebrated Wolf Prize in Chemistry with Richard R. Ernst. And in 2015, the Berkeley campus awarded him with its highest honor, the Berkeley Citation, for going beyond the call of duty and exceeding the standard of excellence in his field. And when it came to teaching and mentoring, Alex was no less of a precious resource. As Jeff mentioned, in 1986, he was awarded the Distinguished Teaching Award, the highest honor in teaching on the Berkeley campus. Describing his teaching philosophy, Alex wrote, "If I am able to fashion a stimulating environment, one which cultivates the students' natural curiosity and creativity and opens for them a few doors to the mysteries of science and the thrill of learning, my efforts are worthwhile." Alex's tremendous impact through his careful mentoring of over 200 graduate student and postdoctoral Pinenuts, as they are affectionately known, many of whom are here today, carries on his legacy at major universities and research institutions throughout the world. In 2021, I gave opening remarks for the Alexander Pines Endowed Lecture in Physical Chemistry, which of course included me reciting a brief biography of Alex. Afterwards, I received an email from Alex in which he wrote, "The introduction was brilliant. You were so compelling that for a moment I caught myself thinking, this guy, Alex Pines, I'd sure like to meet him." And what was so striking about that comment from Alex is that all of his remarkable accolades and accomplishments that can be read off a piece of paper almost pale in comparison to his incredible emotional impact, the indescribable attributes that prompt us to miss him so dearly in such a variety of ways. Alex inspired and touched us all with his brilliance and charm. He never stopped innovating, and he encouraged all around him to do the same. We will never forget him and the legacy he left on our community and beyond. Thank you.
Dear friends, Alex will always be remembered and celebrated for his great ideas and research works, and through the large number of individuals that he has personally brought up in the science world, his Pinenuts. Alex provided loving care and enthusiastic support while his Pinenuts were under his wing in Berkeley, but also after they have left the nest, so to speak. His praise of their work addressed to others in the community are legendary, and his letters of recommendation are well known to be extremely supportive. When one of his Pinenuts is being considered for a job or an award, Alex goes to full court press for them. I have firsthand experience of a particular example. In 1991, my department at UIC had a position open for a assistant professor in analytical chemistry, and Lucia Friedman had sent in an application. Alex made a phone call to me telling me what a great catch he is. And of all the individuals coming out of the lab recently, he's probably the only one who exactly fits the description of the position. Lucia will be a great addition to your department with his new ideas and applications, etc., etc. It went on and on. Not only did he call me, but he called my husband at Loyola University and told him, tell Cynthia that UIC has to hire Lucia Friedman. He will be a great addition to the faculty. That's how much he, with his generous heart, how much he shows his appreciation for his students that he has worked, students and postdocs that he has worked with. I'm not a Pinenut, so my history with Alex is a bit different. I'm not sure when he first became aware of our work because we were not really in NMR proper. We were working with gas phase NMR. And I saw him first, when did I first see Alex? It was in the 1980s in a conference in Cambridge, an NMR conference in Cambridge. And he was giving a talk, and he showed a slide of a quenched magnet. And he said, we are doing zero field NMR, but not that way. Typical Alex. 1990 to 1991 was when our orbits met. Because I had not introduced myself to Alex at all. He was such a big figure, I was too shy to approach him whenever I see him in conferences. But in 1991, everything happened. We started to put xenon into zeolites. Bob Harris was very interested in intermolecular chemical shifts. And of course, Bob Harris being the way he is, he was doing it with the simplest possible system, triplet hydrogen molecule, to get the chemical shielding tensor. And Bob had seen our work in xenon, and he wrote to me. And I think that's how Alex found out about our work, is through Bob Harris. Finally, in 1991, our research directly overlapped. We were putting xenon into zeolite sodium A. I didn't even know that Alex was working with xenon at that time. All of a sudden, there's a Fish Rev letter paper scooping our work. So I told my student, it's okay, don't feel so bad. If you're going to be scooped at all, it might as well be by Alex in Fish Rev letters. Anyway, later that year, he announced the optical pumping to produce hyperpolarized xenon. So 1991, everything happened at that time. Because I was doing work with xenon, and he started working with David Wemmer on the biosensor using xenon in tryptophan cage, and we had been working with a theory of xenon chemical shifts in tryptophan cages. He invited me his students invited me to come to Berkeley and attend one of their group meetings. And from that time on, I came several other times, the last time being in 2014. In 2000, the first Xenon NMR conference in Sestri Levanti started a series of conferences. Alex was so kind, introducing me to all the people in Xenon NMR that I had not met before. He's such a big heart. You can think of his brain, of course, but his heart was even more something that one should always remember. He was so generous in his praise for the work of other people, not just his Pinenuts, but other people. So it would be great to compete with Alex because he always will say, "You are doing great stuff." He was my cheerleader, and he made me feel that my work was worthwhile. And for that, I will always be grateful. In early September, when I last visited Berkeley, it was such a pleasure to chat with him about his favorite people who were already gone, Bob Harris and Erwin Hahn. I was so pleased to see how well he looked and had thought his recovery would be complete. Alas, it was not to be. I wept right after Songy called me and told me that he had passed away November 1st. I felt such a great loss. He felt he was my cheering squad in research. Because of his stature, this meant a great deal. The profound sense of loss I feel, is the loss of his loving support.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeremy Geffen. I'm the Executive and Artistic Director of Cal Performances. Alex Pines served on the Board of Trustees of Cal Performances twice, from 2001 until 2004, and then again from 2016 until 19, before becoming a sustaining trustee of our organization. I met Alex in January 2019. I'd recently been appointed to my current position, and though it would be several months before I would officially start, I had flown out from New York for a special board meeting to be introduced to those trustees I hadn't met during the interviews. Alex approached me at the conclusion of that meeting and introduced himself as a fellow Jew of Southern African background. But he explained that this would be his final meeting as a trustee as he was stepping down to focus on his health. I was immediately struck by his warmth, his humor, and his directness, as I'm sure so many of you in the ways your lives intersected with his were. One could heat one's hands on the warmth of his personality. Over the years, Alex and Dietza welcomed me into their home for gatherings of family and friends. Those of you who have experienced that particular form of benevolent chaos know that to walk in was to be assaulted in the best way by music, laughter, spirited debate, and children's voices, to encounter overwhelming varieties and obscene quantities of food, and to have several plates and a glass of something placed in one's hands without being aware of their origin, to experience sensory overload and hospitality, informality, and love. And to see at the center of it all, holding court with stories and jokes and inviting others to share, Alex in his chair, like a sage, though I will admit that on more than one occasion, the image crossed my mind of him as the titular character in Monty Python's The Life of Brian. No doubt much will be said today about Alex's extraordinary brilliance and achievement. So many people know the name Alex Pines for both. But I like to think that Alex is best understood by the quality of the company he kept, which includes all of you. In those gatherings, I met people of many backgrounds, but all of them had remarkable human qualities. His children share his brilliance, his kindness, and his warmth. I'm sure I'm not alone when I say that I feel as if I was adopted by the Pines and that their home, for me, is a cherished refuge. The Pinesian force that through the green fuse drove the flower was his zest for people and his inextinguishable curiosity about the broadest palette of subjects. His passions were as deep as they were broad, and a woefully incomplete list includes subjects from chess to wine to soccer, and especially to classical music. Though I never had the opportunity to hear Alex play, I know he was an accomplished pianist since his childhood. I relished our conversations about musicians and music, particularly orchestral music, opera, chamber music, and the great opera singers, instrumental soloists, and conductors of the past and present. No one could accuse Alex of being uncertain in his views. But it was noteworthy that when a well-articulated point reached him, it could cause him to revisit his opinion, even if it meant that his original stance might be reinforced. Amongst music lovers, this openness, perhaps a more scientific approach, is less common than one might think, and I respected him greatly for it. Alex's passion for the performing arts made him a particularly strong advocate for Cal performances. He was in the audience for our greatest triumphs, and I remember him telling me that an important factor in his decision to remain at UC Berkeley, when he had offers from other top-flight university, was strongly informed by the environment created by the world-class musical and dance offerings of Cal performances. And that Cal performances is a resource that allows the university to attract and retain the highest level students and faculty. I think about that comment often, and it guides me in my work. Alex's insatiable curiosity for so many subjects and his exceptional warmth and humor were common qualities between Alex and his dearest friend, the speaker who I have the pleasure of introducing, Mr. Gordon Getty. Though they met through science, they shared the fundamental belief that great science requires extraordinary art in order to flourish. Thank you, and please welcome Mr. Getty.
Shambled my way upstairs. I met Alex around 1990, I guess. My wife was studying chem with him here at Berkeley. And they hit it off, and pretty soon we were close friends. And we'd go on trips together with Clark Howell and Desmond Clark and John Searle and other Cal professors and close friends. And we were at the Barcelona Olympics and other places. And he was always the guy, he was always upbeat. And the conversation was never about him, his conversation. I mean, you'd never know what line of work he was in unless you happen to know. He was so considerate, such a model gentleman. Well, and so that's the way it stayed. By the way, if he were here and talking about me in such a sad occasion, I would expect a proper roasting, I'm telling you. Because that's what, I mean, a loving roasting, okay? That's the way they should be. And, memories. I'm not much at chem. I mean, at school, I was an English major. And anyhow, we would go to these red eyes, he called them. First we would watch some, we call it soccer, and the cognoscenti call it football, a European football. We would watch Birmingham against Real Madrid or something. And he would say, if you know how this came out, you tell me, you die like a dog. And anyhow, after that, we would go, and he called them red eyes, because we would go have red meat, a steak, red meat, then we go to have red wine, then we go to see an action thriller. Now, this guy did science and philosophy and heavy thinking all day. And when he went to the movies, he wanted anything but. I know that feeling. Well, a couple of months ago, I was invited to Chez Panisse with him, and it was one as usual. And he was as healthy and hale and funny and full of vigor and vim and vigor as ever. He said, you guys, I want you to know that I'm going to die sometime in the next 2 months. And I think it was a day or two later, I got an email from him. I'm going to die this week. The next day I heard from Dietz that he's died. Thump, down I go. I mean, anyhow, I'm going to set a record for brevity and kind of stop there. forgot to mention, now Lisa and Kevin are going to do a couple of songs from the choir election.
That we are. We are all here out of an abundance of love for Alex and the inimitable and heartbreakingly beautiful Pines family. You know, and he was a pretty good scientist, we all know this. That's great, but did you know he was also an aspiring singer? One day we were flying somewhere and he was sitting in the seat across from me. He said, Lisa, darling, I taught myself to sing with vibrato. I said, cool, let's hear it. And he was, so he had such love for music, for this man, for his music, and we're so happy to be singing a few songs today that Alex dearly loved. These are two songs from The White Election by Gordon Getty. Settings of Emily Dickinson. The going from a world we know to one of wonder still.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Heggie. It was such a pleasure to follow Gordon's music with a piece that is very special to all of us. I got to know the wonderful Pines family because of the great friendship with the Gettys, and so many events, so much fun. And I remember a particular evening when Anne started talking about Keats, and Gordon started talking about Keats, and everyone started talking about Keats. And I thought, I've never said any Keats. I've said a lot of poets. And so I found a poem by Keats that I loved, and I said it. And shortly thereafter, Anne passed away, and this is so shocking, still can't believe it. And that very day, I ran over to Gordon's house, and I gave him the manuscript to this song, and we did it at Anne's memorial, and then we expanded it to include a violin. Lisa sang, and we're here to do it again today in memory of Alex, and in celebration of Alex. And the words are, "Shed no tear, oh shed no tear. The flower will bloom another year. Weep no more, oh weep no more. Young buds sleep in the root's white core. Dry your eyes, oh dry your eyes, for I was born in paradise to ease my breast of melodies. Shed no tear."
Shed no tear, oh, shed no tear. The flower will bloom another year. Weep no more, oh, weep no more. Young buds sleep in the root's white core. Dry your eyes, oh, dry your eyes, for I was taught in paradise to ease my breast of melodies. Shed no tear. Overhead, look, overhead, 'mong the blossoms white and red. Look up, look up, floating now on this flash pomegranate bough. Sing me, 'tis the silvery bill ever cures the good man's ill. Shed no tear, oh, shed no tear. The flower will bloom another year. Adieu, adieu, with long adieu. I vanish in the heavens blue. There he is. I wanted to give a loving roast to Alex. I'll use the mic. I want to give a loving roast to Alex. Time is very limited. I will be brief. I first met him when he was 34 and I was 38. This is a picture of the two of us from around that time. Note the full head of black hair, almost, on Alex, and my long brown tresses. The year was 1978, and I had arrived in Berkeley as the first woman faculty member in chemistry. This is about Alex, not about me, because, Alex was in the full throes of his irrepressible self. We all know about that. I would like to share a few memorable anecdotes regarding our initial interactions. This is part of the roast. One of those took place after a physical chemistry lecture in Lewis Hall, as Alex and I walked out together with another chemistry colleague. Alex turned to his neighbor, not me, and said to him, "I'll bet she hadn't understood a word of what she heard." Though probably closer to the truth than I wanted to acknowledge, this was definitely not woke or PC. All right. But this was back in 1978. A second amusing event occurred when Alex paid me a visit in my new office in Hildebrand Hall. The department had provided me with a nice corner space with multiple windows and a view. Alex entered, he walked around, he was very forthcoming, making it clear that he was on the prowl for a new office. His final assessment was, my office was okay, but perhaps not the size that he was looking for or needed. It was at that juncture that Alex settled into his expansive domiciles, first in the depths of Hildebrand Hall and later in Stanley Hall. Size had clearly trumped, no pun intended, a room with a view. Alex is in his element. You've seen this picture, but it so represents who he was and how he had such mastery over himself, the college, his science. Alex was part of the preeminence of physical chemistry in the college at that time, at its core, embracing our understanding of nature as fundamental to future innovation. Alex also turned some of his enormous energy to teaching Chem 1, which he revolutionized with many technological advances along with Mark Kubanek. Now, this didn't stop him. You can't really see this, but he wrote long, handwritten, voluminous, and encouraging notes of advice to the students. So it wasn't just what the problem sets were or what the exams would contain, but he wanted to encourage them to love chemistry the way he did. This is his big heart. I know you can't see anything behind that big blue bar, so ignore that. Anyway, I had always assumed that Alex had been born in Israel, but whenever I spoke to him about that, he reminded me that he had grown up in Rhodesia, so the importance of South Africa in his sense of his childhood. Anyway, I finally visited Rhodesia. It had then been renamed Zimbabwe, and I was captivated by Africa, but especially this photo I took of Victoria Falls, a World Heritage Site in Zimbabwe. And that's a picture of a young man standing in front of the falls with the mist moving up into the sky. Anyway, to keep it brief, this photo for me is a metaphor for the qualities and character of Alex, an expansive intelligence, a big heart, enormous presence. Alex, you are missed. Your departure leaves both a big legacy, but a huge hole. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dave Wemmer, and I had the pleasure of working with Alex for over 50 years. So I have about 1 minute per decade to describe a little bit about his influence on me as a teacher, a mentor, a collaborator, a colleague, and importantly, a friend. I started at Berkeley as a naive young graduate student in winter quarter 1974. I had done a small undergrad research project in NMR, and in spring quarter of 74, Alex taught a special topics course on NMR and gave exceptionally clear lectures explaining the principles for both physical and synthetic chemists. My first exposure to Alex's brilliance as a teacher. One of the other graduate students I got to know, Stu Allison, was working with Alex and told me how interesting the work was, and I ended up joining the Pines Lab. This was the days before we were called Pinenuts. During graduate school, the Pines Lab was an amazing environment in which to learn. Group meetings were lively discussions of concepts and new ideas in magnetic resonance. Laptops didn't yet exist. Data were shown on paper and ideas worked out on the blackboard. Alex was a fountain of ideas for new experiments, so many that we had to learn to filter for the best ones, lest we have any chance of keeping up. I realize now that a key to the vitality of the group was the people that Alex attracted to the lab. At that time, Shimon Vega working on theory for multiple quantum transitions, Dave Rubin designing hardware so we could do experiments no one else could do, Herbert Zimmerman providing labeled compounds for use in experiments, as a single crystal if that's what you wanted. And visitors to the lab like Bob Griffin, Michael Mehring, and Zev Luz, who were leaders in magnetic resonance. And of course, there were the other graduate students, enthusiastic about research and also making the lab great fun. It was almost like a family, including trips to a little hole in the wall in San Francisco for dim sum that Alex hosted. These were events that presaged the later Pine Fests that everyone came to ignore. This was a period that I very fondly remember. After I did a short postdoc with Mehring, I moved to that other school across the bay and started learning biological NMR. I was in touch with Alex with some regularity to write papers for my graduate work. Somehow this hadn't gotten done during graduate school. From there, I moved up to the University of Washington, where another pine nut, Gary Drobny, had gone after finishing at Berkeley. I didn't have much contact with Alex for a couple of years, but then he again provided a major influence in my life in the form of a short note, pre-email days, suggesting that Berkeley might be interested in hiring in bio-NMR. If I was interested, I should apply. He was right about the interest from the biophysical chemists, and a few months later, I returned to Berkeley as a faculty member. As such, I came to know Alex from another viewpoint, as an outstanding colleague, expert in recruiting graduate students, new faculty, and helping the department and college run smoothly. At Berkeley, I had to keep some scientific distance from Alex at first, but of course still interacted with him in many other ways. After about 10 years, a new student, John Heller, wanted to do solid-state NMR of peptides, and of course the way to do this was a collaboration with Alex. A bit later, another student, Seth Rubin, wanted to see if we could apply hyperpolarized xenon that Alex's lab had been actively using to biological problems. Again, this became a very active and successful collaboration. In the end, our work gave rise to about 50 papers together. At the end of 30 years of working together with Alex in the department, he decided to formally retire, though he remained active in many ways, and I had the pleasure of helping to organize the presentation of the Berkeley Citation for Alex, the highest honor the campus gives, for his contributions in teaching, research, and support of the campus. Reviewing his record for that nomination reinforced for me just how much Alex contributed to Berkeley and all of us here. He was an individual that set standards in science and in life that everyone can aspire to. I miss him very much and think of him often.
Hi, I'm Lucio Friedman. I worked with Alex from 1990 to 1992. And Jeff asked me to be very brief. So we've spent about 2.5 hours not long ago, chaired by Rob Tico, telling recollections about our days with Alex. We're going to do that again next week at the Experimental NMR conference. So what I was thinking I would say in this couple of minutes is what I believe that out of my journey with Alex, I would distill as the main things that I carry with me and I will carry with me through the days. And I think those main things are 3 characteristics. One, of course, was Alex's brilliance. Alex's brilliance was reflected in many different aspects. First of all, he immediately understood the nature of a problem and the nature of a solution. Even many years after I stopped working with him, whenever I would start explaining what I thought was a very good idea, he immediately clicked. I knew what the solution for that idea was. Alex's ideas were also endless, and they were always trying to seek something that was out of the common path. That he had his impossible problems. It was seeing one of those impossible problems resolved in 1989 with dynamic angle spinning and double rotation that brought me to Alex's lab. And as a matter of fact, the problems that Alex exposed throughout the years still guide my own work to this very day. But Alex's brilliance was not only reflected in science, he had also a very insightful way of solving problems in everyday life. And I remember calling him from long train rides in Europe, or from bicycle rides in Israel, or walking in Manhattan, and telling him, Alex, I have 2 options, they are both good, or Alex, I have 3 options, they are all bad. What should I do? And he would always be there to answer them. The second characteristic that I take with Alex forever with me, the one that I envy him for the most, was Alex's enthusiasm. Alex's enthusiasm was simply contagious. Whether he was talking about politics, or about football, or about science, if he was talking about science, you just wanted to jump at whatever he was discussing. You just wanted to do it. It was like a magnet. And that was a very dangerous thing to do, because Alex had many ideas. And for those that work with Alex, we know that some were brilliant and some were, they would take you forever to solve them. And so you had to use there your discrimination. But the thing that I envy him for the most was his boundless enthusiasm. But I think there are people that are brilliant out there, and there are people that have lots of enthusiasm out there. But I think that the third and most important thing that distinguished Alex was his boundless generosity. Alex had generosity beyond anything I've seen, and not just with ideas, with time, with credit, with intellectual resources, with material resources. Many of us left his lab with a probe under our arm. I took my VAX, the VAX that I used during my Berkeley days in the U-Haul truck when I left. And of course, giving credit. He would all the time be giving credit to other people, like Cynthia was mentioning, for things that were obviously had only one thing in common, which was the fact that Alex was behind these ideas. So I think the good thing about the mixture of enthusiasm and generosity is that I want to believe that thanks to that enthusiasm, a little bit of generosity has sprinkled and stuck to many of us. And that actually has made the field of magnetic resonance a much nicer place to spend a lifetime of research than many other fields I know out there. We're just a little bit more generous, thanks to Alex, and maybe that helps make the world a little bit less selfish and a place where sharing is also valued. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rob Tico. I was a graduate student in Alex's lab in the early 1980s, and that time and my interactions with Alex had a tremendous impact on my life and on my subsequent career. And over the years, I had many conversations with Alex about science and current events and our lives and our families, and also about music, because that, as we've heard, as we've seen, that was a big part of his life. It's also a big part of my life. And Alex knew that I was an amateur musician, but I never had the opportunity to actually play for him. So if there's no objections, I'm going to do that right now. Okay, that works. So this is a piece written by a Brazilian composer, Osvaldo Lacerda, called Melodia, written in 1974, around the time that Alex was an assistant professor here at Berkeley.
Hello, I'm Rachel Martin. I was in Alex's lab from 2002 to 2005 as a postdoc. It's so wonderful to be here with everybody today and celebrate all the different aspects of Alex, and to hear more about his love of music. And Alex taught us all to perform one way or another. That was one of the main things that he gave to us in his lab. So it's really great to see that. When I first came to Alex's lab, I was expecting to have some sort of meeting with him where we planned out what I was going to do as a postdoc and map out some kind of project and figure out, the plan for the future. And I went into his office in the dungeon level of Hildebrand and said, "I'm here, Alex, should we talk about what I'm going to do in the lab?" And he looked at me over his glasses very sternly and said, "You have a PhD in chemistry. Why should I tell you what to do? Go do something interesting." And so I think I did, hopefully, but that was how he ran his group. He never told us what to do. He gave us interesting problems. He argued with us about how to do things, and he just let us go do it. It was wonderful how much he trusted us to get the science done. And that's something that I try to carry forward, and now I interact with my group. I also want to say, Dietza, I thank you for sharing Alex with us. You welcomed all of us into your home and treated all of us as family. And the Pinenuts are a lot of fun, but we are a lot. So I thank you for that. Some of my happiest memories in Berkeley are at your house. And then the last thing I'd like to say is when I was leaving Alex's lab, when I got my faculty job, he called me into his office for a meeting. And I knew that this was going to be something really serious because, Alex wasn't usually so formal. Usually we just kind of wandered in and out and everybody talked about things. So I came into his office, I was getting ready to leave. And he poured each of us a glass of whiskey, and he had his cigar. And then he laid back on his couch. He was having back problems at that point. And so you have to picture the scene. He's lying on the couch, takes a couple puffs of the cigar, a sip of whiskey, and he says, "Rachel, I know I make this job look easy, but it's really stressful." So that's something that I just appreciate so much. No matter what is going on, Alex never let us forget that science is fun, and I think that's so important for us to remember right now. It's a hard time for everybody, but science is fun, and it's so wonderful to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Bob Griffin from MIT, and I had the pleasure of knowing Alex when he was a graduate student and his early days of science and everything he did for us. And these are a couple of photographs from him when he was a student with John Waub. You see the PDP-8 computer manual on the desk there. That's the kind of computer we were working with. And later on, he didn't have his cigars then, he had his pipe. So he smoked a lot. But anyway, when Alex was at MIT, he worked primarily with 2 or 3 people. And these are a couple of people that he was very good friends and colleagues with, Juan Q. Rim and Mike Gibby. And when he was a student, John Waugh tasked Alex and Mike to build a new spectrometer. And that's really what they were doing when I arrived in the lab in May of 1970. And he set me down, got me a desk, got me a chair, told me things were going to be okay. MIT was not as bad a place as you've heard about, Much nicer than Berkeley, and he said. Anyway. He also worked a lot with Michael Mehring, a good colleague of ours who's now a professor at the University of Stuttgart. And Michael and he built a lot of equipment, for example, a 1 kilowatt transmitter that he and Juan Q. Rim used in some very famous experiments, the so-called magic echo experiments. Now, Alex did some really interesting and important things for science during his graduate career. I always told him that he did his best work not at Berkeley, but he did his best work at MIT, right? Okay. He loved that comment. And this is one thing he did. He built a computerized pulse programmer. Now, this is very technical, so I apologize for the technicality issues here, but this was a revolutionary idea in instrumentation for magnetic resonance in that it enabled people to test new ideas. We had a lot of new ideas, new pulse sequences. We wanted to try new experiments. And before this pulse programmer came along, we had a bunch of Tektronix pulse generators. We would put them in a rack and wire them up with cables. So it was a very, very laborious, tedious process, and it never worked. So this piece of instrumentation that Alex generated reduced that task to simply writing a very simple program, computer program. And this is what's done today in virtually all commercial NMR spectrometers in every lab around the world. Right? Now, one of the things he did with that was publish this paper with 1Q-RIM called The Violation of the Spin Temperature Hypothesis. And what he was able to do was take a very complicated idea. He had these pulses, which are denoted here by B of X, and what they did is refocus the dipole Hamiltonian, put a factor of -0.5 in front of it that I showed you down here at the bottom, all right? So a bunch of phase cycling. So this was a very, very complicated pulse sequence, a very complicated experiment, and what Alex did was just enabled it to make it almost trivial. And this experiment was done sort of the day that I walked into John Waugh's lab in May of 1970. And this shows the echo in a homogeneously broadened spin system that was possible because of this new instrumentation that Alex had developed. And this led to very complicated experiments. A whole bunch of, a series of them are shown here, magic echoes in all kinds of different circumstances. And this led our colleague, our famous colleague, Erwin Hahn, to say that with a pulse sequence like that, you could bring back the Messiah. This is a very famous pulse sequence, a very famous comment that Erwin had. Now, Alex's most famous paper, his most cited paper, is actually this paper right here, Proton-Enhanced Nuclear Induction Spectroscopy with Mike Gibby and John Waugh. And this is the paper that's basically the basis for everything that's done in solid-state nuclear magnetic resonance these days. This is a spectrum, an NMR spectrum of a compound called animantane, and what Alex introduced was a way to do high-resolution spectroscopy in solids. He did it with proton decoupling and looking directly at carbon-13. So this, as I said, is again the basis for basically everything that's going on in my lab, in Lucio Freeman's lab, and anybody's lab who does solid-state NMR these days. Songyi Han, I can't say whoever else is here, yeah. So this is Alex, a spectrum that was published in that paper, a bunch of powder patterns from carbonyls and carboxyl groups. And this is Alex, actually, his most cited paper, if you like H indices and things like that. Now, he kept a very close contact with MIT. Although he was at Berkeley, he kept a close contact with MIT. And in 1987 here, our department head, Mark Wrighton, was soliciting money to improve, to the facilities at MIT. And so Alex being an alum, he sent a letter to Alex, soliciting a donation. And this is what Alex did. What resulted is, you see right here, it says, "Thank you for your nasty letter of October 29, 1987. And what Alex had done is actually pledged $24 million to the MIT chemistry department, okay? And Mark Wrighton, who was subsequently head of the chancellor at Washington State, he says, "We deeply appreciate the first installment of your $24 million donation at your earliest convenience, with all good wishes," okay? So this is the kind of interaction we had with Alex over the last 50 or so years, all right? So something very important. Now, I met Alex in May 1970, so I knew him for 54 years. We had many, many good times together. We had many ferocious arguments together. We screamed and yelled at one another about all kinds of things about science, but we always got together at NMR meetings, and in the middle here you see a photograph of Pines, John Waugh, our colleague Michael Merring, and myself at the ISMAR meeting in Berlin in 1998. We met again when he came to MIT with Mike Merring and myself in 2011, and most recently we were together at the Euromar meeting in Aarhus in Denmark. So we've been friends for 54 years, and I can say this is one of the most treasured friendships I've had over this entire period. So Alex, we really miss you, all right? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lester Lynch. I'm operatic baritone and a teacher at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. Some years back, I was at a dinner at Mr. Getty's house, and I had the great pleasure of meeting the Pines. And Gordon and Alex sat there talking about music and art and poetry, and the whole room was filled with joy and great intellect. It was so wonderful to be around them. So from henceforth, whenever the Pines were coming to dinner, I always tried to be on the list. When all this came about, Dietza asked if I would sing an aria. Of course, I agreed. But then she called and said, would I read 2 poems, the most beloved poems of Alex, and so here they are. The first is I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. I need my glasses for this. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon the inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. His other favorite poem is A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns. Oh, my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love's like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I. And I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands o' life shall run. And fare thee will, my only love, and fare thee will a while, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile. Thank you.
My name is Ed Bax. I work at the NIH in Bethesda, Maryland. I I feel very privileged to be part of this celebration of Alex's life. I never had the pleasure to work directly with Alex, but he's been an incredible force in my life, and I owe him a great deal of gratitude. Jeff, is Jeff around here somewhere? Oh, can you show me how I get that slide that you were going to pull up?
Sure, of course. Let's see.
It highlights my connection to Alex. If
Which one of these?
you can make it show. This one here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is. Right.
Thanks very much. Alex actually inaugurated me into his Pinenut team. Like I said, I never worked directly with Alex, but the very first paper, scientific paper that I published, he was actually the senior author on it, and it happened because a guy in our group back in the Netherlands did a sabbatical over with Alex, and when he came back, he tried to carry out one of Alex's ideas on measuring multiple quantum in liquid crystals, and I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about, but I did the measurements for him, and I got my name on the paper. That's my one and only paper with Alex. But it was a lot of fun, and so there's great memories. As pointed out by many others, Alex was widely admired not only for his brilliance and his out-of-the-box thinking, but also for his incredible sense of humor. One event that probably quite a few here might actually remember, he gave the after-dinner speech at an ENC probably about 15, 20 years ago. And he had this incredible collection of traffic signs, like the most bizarre kind of things that you could ever think of. And he was somehow able to tie that into NMR. And he brought the house down, Merrill Hall down, I should say. Another vivid example that sticks in my mind dates further back to 1988, when I was still a young guy, and Alex already was the big name, of course. And this was a meeting in Totmos, Germany, an ICMR-BS meeting, and Alex, that's a biological NMR meeting, and the big name at that point was Bob Schulman. He had sort of invented this biological NMR field, and he was sitting on the first row, and Alex was giving a talk. Of course, he had nothing biological to talk about, but he was talking about optically induced transparency. And the first thing that he puts on the overhead projector is a blank transparency, and he says something, I forget what he said. And Bob Schulman, sitting on the first row, made some, to me, inaudible remark, but it obviously wasn't very complimentary. And Alex immediately shot back at Bob and says, Bob, you better pay attention to this one, because it's the only one that you're going to understand. So I've admired Alex not only for his brilliance, but also for other aspects of his life. And actually, he taught me something very important. He taught me, Ed, it's family first. And actually, the first time I heard him say that was during a visit I made to Berkeley here, and for a whole day visit, given my seminar, and I had my half hour with Alex. Still in the old building with the office, a small office, the reprints and preprints were stacked to the ceiling. It looked like a physical hazard, really. But I'm in there for barely 2 minutes. We just start talking. There's some elderly gentleman that comes walking or shuffling in the door, I should say. And immediately Alex switched all his attention to this elderly gentleman. And I was sort of wondering what's going on here. But then Alex turns around and introduces me to him. He said, this is Glenn Seaborg. And my jaw sort of dropped. I had originally was trained in nuclear physics before I discovered nuclear magnetic resonance. So being in the same room with Glenn Seaborg was like being in the room with God. And at that point, the phone rings, and it's Dietze. And he immediately forgets about both of us. He sort of waves us off into the hallway. So I got to meet for 15 minutes with God. When he came back to his office, he says, Ed, remember this, it's family first. And that's a very important lesson, really, that stuck with me. And I've admired him for this many, many times. Alex has been an incredible supporter of me during my entire career. But more than that, he became an exceptional friend. And you see us here at the North China here in Berkeley, celebrating pre-Christmas Eve dinner, which I've had the pleasure of sharing with his family, my family, at the Chinese restaurant on multiple occasions. And then I understood family first really works. It's an incredible experience to watch this vivacious bunch of people and how intense, our life is intense. Alex lived life with intensity, and his family modeled after that, I think. And it's been an incredible experience to know him. And he leaves me with many great, unforgettable memories that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life with great pleasure. Thank you.
Which one is yours?
Okay, I'm Daniela Goldfarb from the Weizmann Institute of Science. Unfortunately, I was not part of the Pinenuts, but I started my PhD in the 1980s, and Alex had really very, very strong connections to the Weizmann Institute, and we've enjoyed his support for all these years. And as you heard before, it started when he went to high school in Israel. He was in boarding school. Zev Luz was his science teacher, and actually was doing pretty well there. Then Zev spent a sabbatical with Alex, and Shimon Vega was his first postdoc, and he was even older than Alex. So when I started my PhD, there was this Alex Pine's spirit all over the second floor of the Weizmann Institute. And so I sort of knowing through these two big figures. This is a picture of one of his visits to Weizmann. I think it was in the early 90s. But what I really want to tell you is just one anecdote that really shows you the unique character of Alex and his sense of humor. So one afternoon, I think it was about 15 years ago, 10, I sit in my office. Zev Luz's office was next to mine, and at around 4 o'clock or so, and Zev was a very gentle, polite person, and he comes at my door, and he says, Daniela, I need your help. Okay, of course, if Zev asks something, immediately I'm ready, and he tells me, you know, and this was a time that I think the Pines had sabbatical in Israel, and he tells me, you know, Ditsa just called me, and she's trying to find Alex. She calls him, and he doesn't answer, and she tries here and there, and she's really worried. So can you go and check how he is? They were staying in an apartment. So I said, okay, sure. And at that time, we already knew that Alex's health was not very strong. So what to do? Maybe we need an ambulance. So I called my son-in-law, and he's a physician, and I said, listen, we have this guest, and we think that maybe he's not well, he cannot be reached. So what to do? He tells me, okay, you have to order an ambulance now. And then I need to get the ambulance to get permission to get into the Weizmann Institute. So I do this, and together we walk to this apartment. And the first thing Ditsa told us, check if the car is there. So if the car is not there, he went somewhere, and maybe everything is okay, but the car is there. So we come and we knock on the door. We call, no answer, nothing. So we stand there. And then Zev just pushes a bit the door opens. The door was not locked. So he said, okay, shall I go in? And I said, yes, you go in, I wait outside, maybe he's not decent, and so on. Okay, so he goes in, and in the meantime, the ambulance comes, and the paramedic comes out, and they take a stretcher if it's needed, and I'm really terribly worried, okay, then Zev comes out, and he says, it's okay, he was just sleeping. Okay, so big relief, and he comes out, and apparently he was so jet-lagged that he was so tired, he didn't answer any phone. But then we have the paramedics, and we told them about this person that has this condition, and so on and so on. So Alex comes out, so they have forms, they want to perform checks, and they start, and they ask him for his name. What's his name? And then Alex says, Enrico Fermi. And these guys, they write Enrico Fermi. They don't know anything. And then he sits there, and I said, Alex, please answer the questions. They will not. We're lucky if we get them to live without you, but please answer. Okay, after some time, he agreed, and eventually we convinced them that he's okay. Enrico Fermi is doing well, and they left, and then together we went happily back to the office, and Alex went back to sleep. I don't know what he did later, who he called later, but this was Alex. Later, I got to know him personally, and I learned about all these great things that everybody talks about, and he got the honorary PG at Weizmann, and he was on the board of Weizmann, which was very important for the magnetic resonance group. And then when he got the Wolf Prize, this was a big celebration that was also celebrated in Weizmann. So he was really very dear to us, and we dearly miss him. And then I had this really great privilege that when I was president of ISMAR, I handed him the ISMAR Prize, which was...
Hi, I'm Jean Baum, and I met Alex in 1980 and was part of his group from 1980 to 86. So what do I think of when I think of Alex? I mean, of course, his incredible, infectious enthusiasm for science. But really, when I think of Alex, I think of his enthusiasm for life, his enthusiasm for chess, music, his family, as Ad was saying, his enthusiasm for being just a thinker about pretty much everything that he would encounter. And so, sort of what he provided for, I think, for all of us in the picture, and certainly for me, was a role model for work hard, play hard. And what did work hard mean for Alex? And what was, I think, he was trying to convey to us was think hard, be creative, be bold, be unafraid to try new things. So how did we do that? So what did we do? Well, we worked in the lab, and that's Miriam Gotham, and she is working on cutting-edge home-built instrumentation, which was very frequently not working very well, and we were often quite frustrated. We developed the first zero-field NMR experiments that you heard about earlier. You can see down there there's a wooden block and a plastic cylinder, high-tech, very high-end. We relaxed, Rob Tico, that you heard earlier, relaxing, and Herman Cho, who's here, who was thinking deeply about his experiments while he was resting there. So I think that, of course, Alex was also a great mentor. And I think he worked really, really hard to support his students and his scientific family. And I'll just tell you a little story that happened with me to show again how he's tried very hard not only to build science in his students, but also to build their personalities and to help them to grow. And so we were working on this paper, and it was a paper for JAX, and I was the first author. And I think I was a fourth-year graduate student, and I think the paper got rejected. So I went to see Alex about the paper, and I said, what do we do? And he said, well, I mean, at the time, the editor of JAX was Sunny Chan, and so, very, very eminent scientist. So I said, what do we do? And Alex said, well, you're going to write a rebuttal letter to Sunny Chan. And I said, oh, well, I mean, maybe it would be better if you wrote the rebuttal letter to Sunny Chan. To which he said, well, why would I do that? And I said, and I absolutely remember this. He said, well, why would I do that? And I thought, well, because you're Alex Pines and I'm a third-year graduate student, and you want me to write to Sunny Chan and say, you need to accept our paper. So he said, why would I do that? He said, this is your paper, you're the first author, and of course, you can make a much better case for why this paper should be accepted in JAX than I ever would be able to make. So anyway, the good news is the paper was accepted. I did meet Sunny Chan a couple of years later, and he said to me, he knew me. He said, I know you. I said, oh, hello. And he said, yes, I know you. You're probably the only graduate student who ever wrote personally to me about a rejection of a paper. So I thought, yeah, is that a good thing? Or is that... Anyway, so, Alex, as we've heard, of course, has, left an amazing legacy with all of his Pinenuts students, with all of his friends, his family, and, again, when I think of him, I think of his energy and his enthusiasm for everything life, so.
Okay. Dear Alex, I thought I would write, since it's been a while. I was thinking yesterday, I wonder if you remember that time we were in Lisbon together, and we took a taxi to the dodgy part of town. It was to a tiny family restaurant. We were hoping to see a true old diva of fado, and at one point, quite late, she came out from the kitchen where she'd been making food all evening, and she sang for us. In the restaurant, and we were all just enchanted by the beauty of it all. I don't remember her name, but I'm pretty sure Dietza will. We were there with Michael and Maurice, and I think Dimitri was there too. He would have been just starting out, brand new at the time. I'm sure you do remember that time in Lyon and the evening spent there with Stefano and a bottle of 40-year-old Calvados down in the old town. I remember that before I met you, I had been told about this brilliant, larger-than-life, flamboyant American scientist. I guess it left an impression, but at that time I was just a sidekick of Emsley Sr., who says hello, by the way, and I had no interest in spins or magnets. So I knew that coming to work for you was an opportunity I could not pass over. But when I arrived in the lab in Berkeley, I clearly didn't have the slightest idea of the sea change that meeting you would be. I had no sense at the time that this would be one of the most transformative encounters of my life. First, you swept me up into your quite frankly crazy vision of science. With your landmark style, you welcomed me into a science family in D-level that saw me spending days in Roma, talking about the strangest possible ideas in spin-related science. Most of it made little sense to me, but you showed me that there was no limit to our imagination. I remember trying to get foolish experiments to work late at night with Young, talking to you and Goldman about mistakes in relaxation theory, or to Aharonov about the butterfly effect. This, I thought, was what it was all about, and I was all in. You had me, hook, line, and sinker. But then as we moved on, I started to get a glimpse of a second Alex. I realized that you had the same passion for art, music, and weirdly, almost anything else as you had for science. I realized that the 200% Berkeley professor I had actually met was just one manifestation of your 200% approach to the whole of life. And what a ride. And then one day, you welcomed me into your family. Obviously, that's synonymous with Dietzer. And when I arrived, Jonathan was just a few years old, and Naomi and Talia just a few years older. The Itai and Shani were already grown up. Do you remember you used to call Jonathan Pinestein? Since you'd been told he was apparently doing okay at school, I think. You're obviously very proud of all your kids, and to see all three of those tiny kids as proper full adult people today, each radiating their own version of Pinesness, is just amazing. But 710 Keeler and being part of the Pines family is more than just that. It's actually hard to describe in words what it is exactly, or the profound effect it's had on me over the decades we've known each other now. It's a magical place made up by an astounding group of people that you just keep on meeting over the years, who all share some of the same intense passions for life. Shared experiences with that crisscross of people, all out of the ordinary, have shaped me and will stay with me forever. From Danny to Gordon and Anne, to Udi and Benji, to name but a few. Remember Rome with Marinella and Raffaella. And Lucio was there too. I think we were there to work on a book, but the highlight was obviously the discovery of Chinese grappa, right? And speaking of Raffaella and Marinella, they also say hi. The first time Raffaella ever went out for dinner, she was 6 weeks old, and it was with you and Dietzer. You spent most of the evening walking around the restaurant with her in your arms, soothing her to sleep. And just like that, she was in. And she grew up with 710 Keeler as a special place in her own life. She was back here again to introduce Basil just a couple of years ago. Once a Pines, always a Pines, I guess. I could go on rambling about festive Passovers with Brad, or just hanging out watching football on TV. It all feels like yesterday. What an amazing experience it's been. So many unforgettable memories. Your deep-rooted thirst for intellectual stimulation, with your mind running everywhere at 1,000 miles an hour, never ever at rest, with your giant heart and your sense of family, all that has kept me panting just to keep up for the last 35 years. Thank you for setting the example for me. Thank you for giving me the chance to run by your side. And most of all, thank you for letting me in to see it all. Anyway, enough of that. I think I've got to go. I hope you get this, and I'll try to write again soon. With love, to you, to Dietzer, and all the family from Linden.
So I'm Brad Schmelke from the University of California, Santa Barbara. And I was at Berkeley with Alex in the group from 1985 to 1990, at a time when the group had recently expanded a lot and had become very international. I guess always was, but it was just in numbers really diverse. There was people from all over the world, scientists, students, postdocs, and for me, I had come from Arizona via Western Colorado to Berkeley, and I just had never experienced such a multicultural interface and developed so many friends that I keep to this day across these many international sort of connections. I'd like to share a story that I think there's very few of you who probably know, and that's why I decided to share it, because I think it's an example of some of the things Lyndon spoke about. And it is a very special side of Alex and his kindness and generosity and the seemingly infinite energy that he brings to solving problems that would be in a way that no one else would have possibly thought to pursue. And this particular example I want to show involves a friend and Pinenut colleague, Bokin's son. So many of you, I think Bokin is in the audience. I know he's going to be here at the ENC. And Bokin arrived in Berkeley in fall of 1986 as probably one of the very first Chinese students to come to the US to study. And Bokin was full in. He was going with us to Cafe Strada and drinking coffee instead of green tea. He was playing softball with our ill-fated and courageous softball team in the Chemistry League. But he and his wife, Lingan, soon joined him, and they were in Berkeley, but they had to leave their young son, Jason, or Kuishi, and now Jason, behind with Bokin's parents, and who actually was born after Bokin arrived in Berkeley. And so Bokin was here, and Lingan was here, and then during his middle of his PhD studies, suddenly and sadly, Bokin's father passed away. And so this was in early May 1989, and Bokin went over for what he expected to be a short time of just a couple weeks to comfort his mother and to meet for the very first time his by now 2-year-old son who didn't even know him and had never met before. So this was supposed to be a 2-week visit, and but during that time there were some very tumultuous events there that really complicated his return. And these complications resulted in an appreciable delay. He had difficulty getting back to the United States, and this was the time before internet or cell phones, and so just we had no way of knowing how he was doing, where he was, or whether he would, and when, if ever, he would be able to return. And on top of this, Lingan had stayed behind. It was expensive to travel to China, and so she was here. Her English was not that great, but I think thanks to Yue Wu, another small group of Chinese postdocs in the group, we all tried to look after her and sort of ease her worry, but there was really little, if anything, that any of us could do, and knew nothing about what the circumstances were. So as most of you know, Alex is not one to sit on his hands. And so one of the things that I learned from Dietze sort of along afterwards is that Alex's heroic efforts to try to help Bokin. And so this is something that at the time he was doing behind the scenes, and that he first of all began his calls with the US State Department. And they were telling him that he's got a student visa, he should be able to come back, but that's still, we have no idea what's going on. Somehow he figured out the phone number of the US ambassador to China, and then he was talking and calling him. Now this is of course the middle of the night here, so he was up many nights, most of the night, trying to work with the embassy staff, but first in Beijing, and then at the consul general in Shanghai, which was the closest point of US diplomatic sort of staff in China, but compounded by the fact that Wuhan, where Bokin was from, was 1,000 miles from where Bokin's parents lived, where his son was, 1,000 miles from Chongqing, where Bokin's son was born, and which needed paperwork filled out to get a proper sort of authorization from one of the government agencies, either US or Chinese, and furthermore needed to go to Shanghai, about the same distance away, to get consular approval, and moreover in an interview with his 2-year-old son who he never met and had never traveled with before. So against all these odds, somehow things worked out. And so Bokin's stay had turned in from days into weeks. It was extending into its 3rd month. And at the end of July, suddenly, Bo Kin walks in the lab. He just walks in the lab to a open-mouthed, surprised, and happy welcome from us all. We had no idea this was coming. And what surprised us even more was he had somehow arrived with his son. And how did this happen? Because of all those things I just mentioned, the obstacles were huge. And it's really a thanks to Alex's heroic efforts to somehow make something happen which none of us would have thought about. And the thing that he particularly was able to do by forming, if anything, he's charming, persuasive, and persistent, and those attributes served him very well, and I hope they will sort of inspire us all never to give up. But he was able to convince, late at night, probably all night, and probably just wore the consul general down for being able to sort of grant his young son a visa without the consular interview, without having to go to Shanghai, and suddenly they were both there. So Bo Kin went on to finish his PhD with Alex, spend, I think, 4 to 5 years with Bob Griffin at MIT as a postdoc, and during which he and Lingan had the good fortune of having a daughter born to them, Ginny, who then Bo Kin went on and has spent his whole scientific career in the US with Chevron. But there's a short prologue, postlogue to this story that's even happier, I think. First of all, both Jason and Ginny are alumni of UC Berkeley. Jason got his physics degree here at UC Berkeley, and Ginny a degree in chemistry. Furthermore, Ginny is actually a pine nut. For several summers during this time, she was working in Alex's group, working on, I think, optical pumping experiment as an undergraduate student, before she went on to attend the University of California, San Francisco, and receive her PhD in, of all things, magnetic resonance imaging. Isn't that extraordinary? So, I think also it probably establishes the first Pinenuts family legacy in our whole extended family. So none of this would have happened without Alex's extraordinary generosity, warmth, kindness, and actually devotion to all of us in his extended family. And I think, as Doug Clark, you said, is that kind of an example of what Alex made the impossible happen. And that was not just in science. And so there's not a day go by that I don't think of Alex. I don't think of how much I learned from him and from our group here and through such close common friends, and how really grateful I am to have been able to share and continue to share all of this with you. So thank you.
Yes,
Thanks, Jack. Up and down here? Okay, fine. Thanks. I'm Bill Gelbart from UCLA. Unlike almost everybody in the room, I've never worked on anything directly related to NMR, never worked in a lab with Alex. Instead, I've simply had the great fortune to be a really close friend for most of our adult lives. I know Alex from our having started in the same year as assistant professors at Berkeley, 1972. That's Alex on the right. We were in the B level of Hildebrand, just a few steps from each other. We and our families became close friends right away and have stayed close over the intervening more than 50 years. Even though I moved down to UCLA just 2-3 years after I started at Berkeley. In many very different and important ways, Alex was my closest friend. We were passionate about so many of the same things: science, music, and family being at the top of the list. I didn't include enjoyment of food in this list because it sounds so much less serious, but it was also right up there with those other things. When Alex and I were in our mid-late 20s, as in this photograph, we had very impressive appetites. And enjoying food mostly meant eating a lot of it. With no exaggeration, over the course of the 2-3 years that we overlapped at Berkeley, I'm sure that we ate many thousands of pan-fried dumplings, pot stickers at a particular Chinese restaurant. We called it the Red Chinese Place down on University Avenue. As we got older, we started and finished, sorry, I went the wrong way. Finished losing our hair and developing some more discriminating tastes, which included enjoying more than a few good cigars and whiskeys together. Regularly, every few weeks, long before and also well into the time of FaceTime and Zoom, we would call each other the old-fashioned way on the telephone, content to simply hear the sound of each other's voice. Often before hearing the sound of the other guy's voice on the phone, we would be treated to a particularly beautiful slow movement from some chamber music piece that one of us was particularly eager to share with the other. As with so many of you, and we've heard a lot about it from the people who have spoken before, Alex and I enjoyed countless stories, jokes, and laughs over and above talking seriously about science, family, music. But our visits were even more special when we found ourselves sitting and not talking, but rather simply appreciating how much we understood, trusted, and enjoyed each other. I loved Alex, and I loved being with him. All the more so as our visits became less frequent because of his health. In September of 2016, I was abroad when I got a call from a mutual acquaintance of ours conveying his condolences because he had heard news about Alex dying. When I insisted right away, that can't be true, and he asked me, how could I be so sure? I told him, Alex would never do anything like that without telling me first. And indeed, what our acquaintance had heard was the passing of Erwin Hahn. Naturally, he had conflated the two, not knowing either of them well enough. The years go by. Now we're in 2023. This is a photo that I'm so glad Dietza managed to catch. I walked in the door of the house, and Alex came down the stairs in that contraption, bolted out, and we hugged each other. And what I'll perhaps treasure most is the lunch that we were able to have last fall, just a week before Alex died. We were with Dietza, and after taking our time with a many-course, fantastic meal, we agreed it was a good moment to break his doctor's rules about not consuming alcohol. So we poured a couple glasses of Calvados, a drink we were sentimental about for many reasons. And Dietze took this picture of our toasting one another. Not a day goes by without my thinking about Alex in one or another of so many different ways. And I cherish every one of those moments. I miss him deeply, and I will always be thinking about him, conjuring up and reliving our most special friendship. Thank you.
Oops. Hello, everybody. My name is Rene Mandel. I'm a violinist, and I'm going to introduce the piece that we're going to play. But before that, I just wanted to say just a couple words. Everything that I could have possibly said has already been said today. And but there's one thing I just wanted to add to this, which is we are all here in the Pines family, and I think we can all agree that when one becomes a member of this or gets sucked into this orbit, it's like a benevolent black hole that you just can't help, and you're just taken into it. And not only do we as individuals become part of their existence, our families become part of their existence, our friends become part of our existence. I mean, it's never ending. It's one of those mutating organs that just keeps continuing. And I don't want to make any scientific analogies because I look like a freaking idiot. So, but anyway, I love them so much. And as a musician who has, as we all have, done so many things in our lives and been really blessed in all the wonderful areas that we all walk in this room, I think among the greatest, maybe the greatest other than my own progeny is being a member of this family. It's just absolutely, I love you all so much. And I believe Alex and Dietze's greatest achievement. So anyway, what we're going to play is the first movement of the Mendelssohn D minor trio, which Dietze chose, which embodies the passion and the love and the voracious appetite for life that Alex always had in one movement. So I hope you enjoy it. Right at home.
I'm Ann McDermott. I'm a Berkeley Chem PhD grad, but I didn't work for Alex. When I think about that missed opportunity, I recall a clueless 20-year-old recent physics and chem grad from a very coddled environment. I didn't know how important a great mentor would be. Though I saw he was a great person and a great scientist, I didn't see the challenges ahead, social and scientific. But also, when visiting his lab, I don't think I minded the underground, dank, dark spaces. What I think most put me off was in the air down there, so heavy with IQ points, so thick with hyper-genius, secret twin language talk, not remotely possible. But I became aware, though, as the years went on, how special you all are. I had the good fortune, the great good fortune, to work with Mel Klein, who thought the world of Alex and of you all. Through Mel and his many students, Dave Britt, Tom Pradum, Alan Koretsky, Sun An, and the list goes on, and also through many of you, I finally came to see the light, how gorgeous magnetic resonance is, and how unique and powerful Alex's and your accomplishments are. So that later, with a mountain of support from Bob Griffin, I made a switch from mechanistic bioinorganic to mag-res. I then felt the unbearable weight of being late. Like chess players and star sportsmen, you all started in the crib. And starting around 27 is actually ridiculous and hopeless, but then at least a few people let me know that they thought maybe it'd be worth a try. That would be Mel and Bob and Alex. And when I visited my parents regularly in California, Alex generally remembered to ask me to stop by. And this would prove to be an invitation to a conversation where you felt like you were painting on the largest possible canvas. What problems should we work on? Would lead to what new methods are needed, with the implication that, of course, we have the moxie to just make them of whole cloth right here and now. And then, what assumptions do we hold too dear that would actually be better off if we would release them? Cliffhanger conversations that string you along to the next conversation. John Milton and, curiously, Jane Austen shared this notion of a fit conversation, satisfying to the soul, fully and plainly being together, creating and sharing a language. To make another feel as if they are a conversable companion is an art. To make a junior colleague feel the implicit respect is a gift. The space to spar, Socratic dialogue, debates that distill truth, and doing so without the regard for the risk. The risk of being wrong, the risk inherent in difficult subjects, the risk of revealing yourself, which in more difficult political times can have a sinister texture. Such fit conversations do not merely introduce two people, they allow the individual to meet themselves. And many of us live our lives hoping for a few such fit conversations. But what Alex practiced was actually a level up from this Milton-Austen ideal, and I'll call it, for lack of a better word, the elevated conversation. So engaging, so public-facing, it's a kind of high table that you can convene others to. How important is conversation to science? How can it be? The social piece of science is not just that I reproduce your experiment or you are supposed to reproduce mine. It is also this origin of the very best ideas and the whole fields that come from conversations that gather the stray strands of thought into a skein of usable yarn that connects the people and connects the dots. John Milton famously said that our books are not on a shelf with two bookends. They are not in a library with a sentinel protecting them. Whatever walks and talks, that is also our book. For these treasures of life, Austin's books, the few Vermeers that we have, the best conversations we'll have about science, we go through seasons of being drawn in, of developing a taste, only to discover that they are numbered, that one day you've had the last one. But the thing about the elevated conversation, on the other hand, is that that table may live on, lit with a torch that is passed to a new generation. In other words, maybe we should just be a little bit more like Alex.
There it is.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Warren, and I was Alex's third PhD graduate. I got my degree in 1980, and that meant I had the privilege of being the first of his students, along with my wife, Kathy, to meet Dietza, who actually came to my PhD graduation and was such an important part of the lives of so many people here. I'm going to do this a little differently than other people have. I'm going to take a step backward, and I'm going to take a step forwards. So to take this step backwards, I want to point out this is actually the centennial of the introduction of spin in quantum mechanics. That introduction was very inauspicious. Two young graduate students, Uhlenbeck and Goldschmidt, published a paper with no senior author that more or less said electrons could be viewed as tops spinning clockwise or counterclockwise. It took them about a month to really regret publishing that paper because the smart people then came and told them, "You're idiots." The reason was that for that to be possible, the surface of the electron would have to be moving faster than the speed of light. Fast forward just a short period of time, and in fact, it became clear that if you took this seriously but not literally, that it was indeed an important and useful concept, and it brought many things together in atomic physics. And over the course of that century, we went from esoteric atomic physics to what I'm really going to call spin science. And the three people who I think were most involved in that transformation are the three people in this picture. You've got Erwin Hahn sitting over here, Alex's longtime colleague, who, as a graduate student, put together two pulses instead of one. A crazy idea, because pulses just do rotations, and two rotations are just one rotation. And yet he discovered in doing that you could remove the natural imperfections that were present in real experiments and measure things with unprecedented accuracy. And it was the beginning of all of coherent spectroscopy. John Waugh, Alex's research advisor, with coherent averaging and some of the things you've heard about where Alex was also involved, found that it was possible to effectively alter the nature of the world, to alter the way that atoms interacted with one another, more or less at your own control. And then we come to Alex, who over the course of half of a century really is, in my mind, the person who was most responsible for transforming magnetic resonance from something which was esoteric into genuine spin science. Those initial applications that we did actually were very focused. In my day, the major thing that the group did was multiple quantum NMR in liquid crystal solvents, but it evolved into so much more than that. It evolved into applications in engineering, in broader physics, in material science, and an incredible spectrum done, of course, not by Alex, but by the people mostly who are contained in this room who got their inspiration from Alex. And that extraordinary set of developments made it so that for many of us who are in this room today, those years that we spent in this group, we still count as some of the best years of our lives. So now I want to look a little bit forward to the future. The three people you sit here, none of them ever won a Nobel Prize. They all could have if they had been in different fields. If they had been in X-ray crystallography with comparable accomplishments, there would have been 3 such prizes. And spin science, despite this incredible list you see in the back of this brochure of Alex's recognitions, is under-recognized in the broader community. The major professional societies, there are a few people in this room who have awards from those societies, but not very many. The awards that are given out are mostly by the conferences themselves, and they are ephemeral. You will see on this list the Varian Prize. It doesn't exist anymore. So what I would like to do is to suggest to you going forward that I would like to see this community establish the Alexander Pines Prize in Spin Science through the American Physical Society. Before you applaud, there are 2 steps necessary to do that. The first step is you need to get the American Physical Society to recognize that there is a gap in their awards. And for the reasons that I've described to you, I think that's possible, and I'm happy to coordinate that piece. But the second step is that for either a prize, which is $5,000 a year, or an award, which is $10,000 a year, you have to create an endowment which is 30 times that value. And I'm happy to be a major donor to this, but I can't do it myself, and I don't want to do it myself because I think this community needs to be involved. Those numbers are staggering, but if you don't get to that number, the award basically sits in stasis, gradually accumulating interest, or if you're lucky, waiting for somebody to die to give the money to actually make it work. So I am perfectly happy to coordinate this, but only if I believe there is a community of people who want to make this happen. All of you easily can find my email address. I'm not dunning anybody here. warren.warren@duke.edu. I'm certainly not asking you for a check, not after last week, right? But I need to know that when the time comes, that you'll be on board and happy to help this be real, so that we will be able to look back someday when this Alex Pines Award is given out to one of our younger colleagues and say, Pines would have been very proud to see that kind of science happen. Thank you.
Almost as many people as at a Pine Seder. This is impressive. Wow. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicky Baum, and I first entered the Pines orbit when I became friends with Alex and Dietz's son, Jonathan, in first grade 33 years ago. The Pines orbit is a large and complex system, only fully understood by Dietze. There are the Pinenuts, the colleagues, the friends, the kids' friends, the cousins, the Israeli cousins, the invited house guests, the uninvited house guests. Regardless of whether Alex was a chemist or unlicensed hotel operator, he was the central body. His gravity kept the system moving. I held a privileged orbital ring. If you visited Keeler Avenue in the 90s, I was stationed somewhere in front of a Mario Kart game or in the front yard playing basketball. So, hi again. I feel very fortunate to have known and to have learned from Alex since I was 6 years old. I witnessed how he lived with great purpose, devoted to family, community, science, and befriending waitstaff at Chinese restaurants. I want to share a few life lessons I picked up along the way from Alex, and I want to start with a quote. According to ChatGPT, the founder of Outback Steakhouse once said, "We don't have a rule book, we have principles." Then ChatGPT apologized for making that up. Regardless, we're proceeding with this quote because it succinctly summarizes how Alex operated. And eating at Outback was an important Pines ritual. It was our pre-movie dinner stop where Alex and Gordon would spontaneously burst into opera, dumbfounding other patrons. Alex wasn't constrained by the conventional rules, and I can't recall him ever decreeing any rules, but he certainly had principles, and they were very evident. One principle that stood out was that insight means more when it's discovered, not delivered. Alex would often stump us with brain teasers, refusing our pleas for an answer with, "Come on, guys." Eventually, sometimes after days, we'd solve them. It built resilience, but more than that, it taught me of joy of discovering a deep insight. And I've carried on that tradition at my own company, giving brain teasers and no answers to new leaders at their first dinner. I'm still waiting for them to love me for it. Another Alex principle was to demonstrate humility, not disingenuously, but because you actually don't know that much, you schmuck. Alex generously wrote a college recommendation for me when I applied 20 years ago, and I was struck by part of it. The exact words are lost on some ancient Yahoo email server, never to be recovered again, but it was something poetic, like Nikki views the world as a grand sphere of the unknown at which we chip away shreds of knowledge. Whether that was actually my worldview at age 17 is up for debate. But I believe it taught me something about Alex. That view is the only way to explain how Alex, with his talents and his accomplishments, maintained such humility and playfulness. It's hard to take yourself too seriously when you're aware of how much you don't know. And even when celebrated for his brilliance, Alex preferred jokes over reverence. After receiving a beautiful, earnest, heartfelt tribute as the honoree of the Alpine Conference in Chamonix, Alex privately lamented, "I wish they would have roasted me. I had so many good ones to fire back." But of course, who in their right mind would roast Alex? Would you walk into a bar and swing at Mike Tyson? Always jesting, always teaching, often with a martini and cigar in hand, Alex discovered and shared how to live a rich life. Thank you, Alex, for the lessons and for showing us how to chip away at the unknown with purpose and joy.
Hi, I'm Alexei Jershov, and I had the privilege of being a postdoc in the Pines Lab from 1999 to 2001. This feels like a Pines group meeting, so I was a little nervous, I have to say. Too many people for the room, that was sort of the case usually. Very good food, and then people would always criticize. You had a bunch of slides prepared, but you would only get to slide 2. So the next time you knew you didn't have to actually prepare that many slides. So that period, even though it was a short period, it stayed with me for a long time, to this day, and it will stay with me forever. Not just for the things I learned and for the career and life it made for me, but also for seeing what kind of a person Alex was and what kind of a role model he was. What really set him apart was not just his brilliance, but his way of bringing people together. He did it very well, but you could also see he worked hard at it. It was not, it required effort, and he put in the effort. He always put in 100%, or like Lyndon said, 200%, and then 200% in every other field. So I completely agree with that. So what I really valued a lot was he brought people together, but then he also created this space to think freely, to be creative, to develop crazy ideas. And Alex was sometimes hard to get a hold of, but you could start a rumor that you had a crazy idea, and then he would get back to you. And then, of course, you would meet him, and you'd have to convince him that it's really a crazy idea. And he would say, oh, everybody can do this, but then he would make it crazier, and he said, this is what we should do. So his curiosity was truly infectious, and also his sense of joy. And really the way I think back of the time about the life in the lab, it was really a celebration, of course, of science, but really a celebration of life. Also, and of togetherness, creating community. Because he created he didn't just build a lab, he built a community and really a generation of people. It was so touching to me to see also how he paid respect to his mentors and colleagues, such as Irvin Hahn, for example, although they were often sitting together, giggling and bouncing off like crazy jokes of each other, and the jokes would get crazier and crazier, but somehow, weirdly, they got funny again. And then I do remember the time when Zeev Loos visited the lab, and Zeev Loos had terrible eyesight, and it was just so touching to see how Alex led him, by the hand through the lab, showed him everything, described what is there, because they couldn't see very well, described the food, what you have. So he really filled the human side of it completely. And of course, I remember so fondly the hospitality that Alex and Judith and your family extended to us and to so many others. And that warmth and that openness really shaped the way how I think about mentorship and collaboration every day. So, Alex, thank you for your friendship, for your mentorship, for being a source of inspiration, for showing us all that great science and great fun and great life can be in perfect harmony. And your impact definitely lives on. We all are proof of that. It lives on in our work, in our lives, and in the joy that we carry forward. Thank you.
Yeah, so good evening. My name is Ashoka Joy, so I'm from UC Berkeley. Before I start my remarks, I wanted to first thank you all for being here. It's befitting of Alex that we have a main room and we have an overflow room and another overflow room here, and it talks about his impact that he's made across generations. So I was one of Alex's last postdocs, and I got to have a lot of quality time with him. But before I knew Alex the person, I used to, as a young student, voraciously consume his papers. As a young student, it's very easy to be taken by his papers, because every 8 years or so, if you just look chronologically, the papers would completely switch direction. And they would go into some new area, and no one else would be working on this, something new and exciting, something fresh, adventurous, and it will always be something fun, and and the paper is also very well written and very well articulated. And so later on, when I finished my PhD and I was trying to look for a postdoc, I said, Guy, it'd be great to have a chance to work with Alex. But the rumor was Alex was not hiring. The rumor also was his health was kind of up and down. So I sent him an email, there was no response. He sent a second email, there was no response. And finally, through Jeff Reimer, I got in touch with Alex. And then I came and visited him here. I had essentially a 20-minute or 10-minute chat with him. And that was enough, because you could be struck by his personality and his sort of joyous, adventurous nature of his science. And I thought, well, whatever happens, I mean, I will get to learn something by working with him. So I decided to come here. And that was perhaps the best decision I ever made. So I came here to Berkeley to learn science from Alex, but it turned out that I learned so much more. You know, his depth of humanity, his generosity, his ability to see the best in others, his boldness and determination, even in the face of various problems, constraints, and setbacks, including to his health, and his power to bring people together through the sheer force of his ideas and character. These are things that I would, always remember and always carry forward. My wife and I, we are from India, quite far away, and we had no family here. And Dietza and the extended Pines family kind of brought us on board, and we had many conversations at his home. We were so enriched by this, and we'll really miss Alex. He was such a force. I don't know what to say. It's such a wonderful to see you all here, and thank you for being here, and I wish to pay it forward in my own career. Thank you.
My name is Song Han. I was postdoc between 2001 and 2004. And as we have heard now so many times, Alex all made us feel special and part of his extended family. That was the theme all evening today. So many of us kept in contact and continue to feel his strong presence decades after we left Berkeley. So my theory is that he must have developed a way to get us all quantum entangled that persists over space and time. Alex showed us the art and power of mentorship. What's the secret sauce? So let me try to share a few thoughts of mine. He taught us that science is a gift and a privilege and an opportunity to explore a crazy idea, as we all heard so many times, but that was Alex, to take a risk and pursue dreams. He strongly believed that we don't know what we don't know. And that's a philosophy that I really share and think is very important in science. And that meant that there is no such thing as a stupid idea. There are no boundaries. There is no dogma. And there is no impossible experiments. With that idea, he levels the playing field, and the sky is the limit. He believed in that, and he made us all believe in that. Alex did not mentor us as much in the traditional way, like teaching magnetic resonance, for example. I think I never learned that from him. Or offering any project or solutions. I think the closest that I came to having a project meeting might have been the one day I overlapped with Sunil Saxena before he was going to Pittsburgh. And he was the one who told me what project to write. And but Alex was there, inspiring us. So then the question is, how did we do this experiment? We had to somehow still learn it and make it happen. And the way I would like to describe it, similar to what Rachel shared, is I would call it cowboy style. So here's how it goes. Just imagine, so here's a rifle. There's no instruction. There's no training. Oh, you have never used it before? Doesn't matter. Just go and try and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, try it again. That's how we rose to the occasion because we had to and had a lot of fun. Now, astonishingly, we did occasionally go to the proverbial moon successfully with our home-built crooked probes and generated useful data and results. But more often than not, the experiment would crash, and it would be not very meaningful results, or things wouldn't work. But I think what we learned through this experience is something much more meaningful than a lot of papers. We learn to trust our own eyes, our own nose and ears, our own intuition and judgment. That's very important. There's no recipe, there is no how shall we do things, but you're on our own. He trusted us, so we had to make it happen. Very often we would invent the wheel again and again, and often made the wheel worse. But we made the wheel with our own hands. So we learn how to become independent and fearless explorers and thinkers, and I would think, for me at least, that was one of the most important things that I took away from Berkeley when I became a faculty myself. So by the time I arrived in Berkeley in 2001, unlike in 73, as Judith just shared, Alex was then a feminist, I would say. In the sense that he made us, many girlnuts here, who have different styles, everyone is different, feel respected, welcome, and he just valued different people for all of their styles and ways. As a postdoc, I once confided in Alex that I loved science, but I was not sure about academia because I felt not ready for the rough and tumble mud fight it looked like in academia. So Alex looked at me pretty intently and sternly and said, "Nonsense. You got it. Confidence is practiced." And then he told me the story that his advisor, John Waugh, I can't verify, he told me that. He told me that he would confess to Alex, "When will everyone figure out that I'm a fraud?" Adding that John Waugh, of course, was one of the most brilliant men he knew. That pep talk gave me the headwind I needed and never needed that conversation again. And the power of his mentorship was not just to empower us to believe in ourselves, but also to gently expect that we rise to the occasion. In fact, right after his pep talk, maybe the same day, I don't remember, I just know that he said, "Oh, by the way, I am invited to give this after-dinner speech in Ulm at the ICMRM, but I can't go." I think you can do that. You can do that, he says. I remember, I don't know what I remember. It was, I was panicking, but then I think for 1 week I did nothing but prepare for that, and somehow I survived it. In all of his academic pursuit, Alex was clear that family and friends come first. And I too want to thank Dietza for your generosity and showing us how love looks like. We really adored that and felt good in your house and in your environment. Alex taught us what generosity means, and we will carry that lesson with us forever. Thank you.
Yeah, this is good.
This is the arrows, right?
Up and down arrows.
Up and down. Okay, I'm really excited. I'm Offrey, Alex's youngest brother. And I must say that what you're going to hear is very different from what you've heard up till now. Okay. So just to give you an idea, what I want to do is actually show you the movement of traits in our family. And the reason is I'm a biologist. Alex was a chemist. He claimed that biology is, and I claim that chemistry stinks. Anyway, so this is the family. There's my father, Michael, Ubs, that's how we called him. That's my mama, Naima. We called her Imale, Mama. They're the big guy. It's not artificial intelligence. That's Al, okay? And Linky, Leon, Danny, Dunn, and this little guy here is Offs. Okay, so the first trait I want to talk about is brains, okay? Alex got 90%. And you can see by the arrow, I got the least. So we got what was left. But not complaining. I want you to understand, we're not complaining. With the small percentage that we had left, okay, we did very well. We had nice careers. Everything was fine. Okay, so that's the first one. And just to give you a few pictures, during the years, this is Danny's wedding. Can you see how much hair I've got on my head there? This is my wedding. Eating, joking, smoking. This is wonderful friendship we had. Something that, I mean, I don't think you could really understand. These were my best friends. Alex was just amazing. He was just one of the guys. We would punch him up just as much as he would punch us up, okay? This is us watching soccer. It's wonderful. And this is a painting by Udi Peled showing what wonderful brothers I had. This is just fantastic. By the way, Danny's still around, so don't worry. And this is a more recent picture. This is before I shaved off my beard. Second trait, music. Now, I don't have to tell you that music, actually, Alex was a fantastic pianist, but I want you to tell you the root of that. This came from my mother, okay? My mother was supposed to go to France to study piano because of the Second World War. That didn't work out. But I want to tell you how cruel the distribution of the genes were. It's just so cruel. So Alex, my mom gave Danny and Alex the music genes. And Linky and I got Bobkiss from my dad. Not complaining, not complaining, because we couldn't make music, but we can listen to music, so we're okay. The next trait is going to really surprise you. Sense of humor. Now, I'm sure you all know that Alex had a sense of humor, but I want to tell you a secret. Danny got 80%. Danny got 80%. We are not complaining. We each have a wonderful sense of humor, but Danny has a lethal sense of humor, and here you can see what he's doing to Alex. He's actually, stop killing me, Danny, stop killing me. Okay. The next trait is chess. Now, you all know that Alex is a good chess player, but I want to tell you the truth about that. My dad was the Wunderkind. He was amazing. He was champion of Rhodesia. He was one of the strongest players in South Africa. He came to Israel. He was a very strong Israeli player. Alex and I got a tiny bit of this chess ability, but my dad called us patzers. And a patzer is somebody that doesn't know how to play chess. And he told us, guys, I hope that the next generation gives me, because maybe genius will skip a generation. But I can tell you that Alex and I loved playing chess. And just to show you another picture, it was fantastic. Okay. So Al is the most generous person I have known. And I'm not talking about in the scientific scene, okay? I'm talking about family. He was the guy for us. We were all there for each other, and we knew that Alex was there. He was so generous. And I can tell you here the traits of heart, family, friendship. We're lucky because this was a dominant trait passed on by our mother. She gave it to all of us. And I can tell you that it goes into the next generation. and to tell you, and this I really mean, we really miss you, big bro. You were there for us always. We loved you, and we'll always love you. Let's have a checkup here. This is the next generation. 12 grandchildren. Alex is responsible for 5, okay? And I'm just gonna check brains. Oh yeah, there are brains there. Music, yes. Amazing. We just heard Jonathan playing the piano before we came here. Sense of humor, yes. Dangerous sense of humor. Chess, sorry. Garnished, which means 0, okay? And my dad always hoped that his genius would skip a generation. We're now looking for the next generation. Maybe there'll be somebody there. And heart from my mom. That is in all of these. These are wonderful people. Wonderful, wonderful people. Now, how did we survive with all the screwed up genes I didn't tell you about, okay? This is just an example of one, okay? It's because of our soulmates, okay? Ditsa, I don't have to introduce to you. Henya, Malka, and my Gilia, they kept us alive and kept us going. By the way, I'm wearing a jacket because Ditsa told me to wear a jacket. And just these wonderful partners that we had have kept us going. This is absolutely wonderful. And finally, Ditsa told me that I have to express the gratitude of our family to the College of Chemistry, the Faculty Club, our host, Jeff, the organizers, the speakers, the musicians, the Pinenuts, our friends, and to you all for joining this tribute to our beloved Alex. Was that okay, Ditsa? Thank you so much.
Great. I'm pleased to introduce Itai to come on, please. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Itai Pines, the oldest of the 5 Pines kids. Oh, thanks, guys. You could tell I was lonely up here. So thank you all for being here today. I can't convey in words what it means to have everyone here, so I won't even try. I'll just say thank you. Like my siblings, I spent much of my young life on this campus, and for never having been formally enrolled at this particular campus of the University of California, go Bruins, I personally learned a lot here. In fact, one of my father's favorite stories took place right here. I was around 8 years old, and we were having lunch, and I asked him, why does Jell-O wobble? One of his colleagues replied that the better question was, why doesn't everything wobble? He then launched into a long explanation of chemical bonds and molecular structure, and he may have been doing some drawings on the back of a napkin. Reports differ. Later, I reportedly said to my dad in amazement, wow, that guy sure knows a lot about Jell-O. Now, the image in my young mind that people here devoted their lives to studying Jell-O may have been confused, but it contained within it the germ of an idea that would prove very important. That it's okay to spend your life learning about the things you find interesting. The world is interesting, and it's good to be interested in it. Our dad was always interested, always engaged, always passionate. His passions animated him, not just the science of nuclear magnetic resonance, but also chess, soccer, politics, wine, action movies, and for one regrettable period in the 90s, rap music. Some of you remember. Our father also knew another important secret, that the best thing to do with your interests was to share them, whether it was as a professor teaching a class, sharing a cigar with a friend, or dragging the five of us to Pinole to see the latest Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Dad was all about sharing his interests. I know my siblings and I all strive to do the same now, to be together as much as possible, and to share the things we love with the people we love. After all, what better life could there be than to be in the world, fully and openly, and together with your loved ones? I can't help feeling that the very idea of open inquiry is under attack, that more and more we are being told to not ask questions, to stay out of it, to look the other way. So I do hope that this place will continue to stand against that tide. And as we gather in the memory of the most inquisitive man I ever knew, that we will all continue to take an interest in the world and in each other, and to love and support each other, come what may. Thank you.
Absy, my Absy. Oh no. Okay, everything's fine. The only person who could help edit and capture his essence is him. The only person I would ever ask for help. The only one who could truly write something like this. His suggestions were not just outside the box, but outside the stratosphere. No one could predict them, but everyone could revel.
There's nothing we know that we didn't learn from him, didn't call him to ask about. Chaos and chirality and Chopin. He was magnetic, holding court and gently bellowing stories with economists and artists.
He loved being ridiculed by his children.
He let us laugh at him, and we were merciless. He made it so easy, so much absurd material to work with. We climbed over each other to get to wit fastest, often arriving at the same pun.
To understand each other so well, to reduce each other to water, to our essence, with jokes and roasts and love. Oh, see me many mime!
Every time he said our names, they held a world of special, even if they were usually the wrong names. The names of a sibling. We got to be passengers in his enormous-hearted train, whipping through nocturnes and daffodils, chess and cowboy westerns. He taught us to make martinis when we were 9. He taught our children to use a fly swatter as an instrument.
What a privilege we had to have him in this way. He created a glass house of what life could be and really made it that way. Any activity or new t-shirt or sock was top of the line. Every John Wick movie was the best John Wick movie. To live inside that was just the best thing in the world.
A scientist told us, one that's here. He speaks like an accordion. And we got to grow up with all of you, with your science and your stories, your quartets and your art and endless meals, your laughter, your array of languages, and your impossible problems. Who else carted their entire family around to every conference and conversation, dragging televisions into lecture halls so they could conclude in World Cup multinational cheering sessions? We were in the lab too, with so many of you over all these years. We were busy photocopying our faces, and occasionally, when Dione excused herself, our butts.
He squished and condensed so many lifetimes into one.
Everyone loved our dad. No one knew it as much as he did. It drove us insane. Arriving at a shop and gazing through the window, he would say, "Oh, they love me." And we would say, "Okay, Dad, sure." When we went in, someone inside would be staring out the window, mouth agape. Immediately, they would say, "Oh my God, is that your dad? I love him."
Truly, everyone did love him, but to be loved by him was the greatest feeling in the world. All the perfectly strange oddities of who he was, always getting the longest French fry,
We had to memorize special phrases, so if our faces ever melted off in a nuclear holocaust, we could still recognize each other. Boogerfied person, all you give me is a belly full of worms. We're still learning not every family has these traditions. He slapped the men we married, and sometimes strangers late at night in a hotel bar too, just to bring them to their senses. To his senses of loyalty and generosity, his sense of cigars and of chalk. Their shock always turned to warmth and gratitude. They locked the doors to keep him in their restaurants. How could they let the glory of his presence ever leave? His 8-mile phase, when he left an outgoing message for those that called the house, "Hey, motherfucker, you've reached the Pines. After the beep, say your fucking lines." Taking trash out in the morning, he would absent-mindedly drive the trash bag to work with him and bring it back home at the end of the day. He reclined the driver's seat so far back when he drove that he waved at stunned pedestrians from the back window. He tried walking home from work. He always got lost, and he had to be rescued by Mom, Dietz, Boubale. She chased down cable guys all over the world just to make sure he could watch soccer. What a strange, strange man. He was too good to be true, and yet he was. A wise brother once told me that Dad could have died a long time ago, so think of every day as a bonus, but we are greedy. We want more and more bonuses, because when someone created a life that is out of this world, what happens after they are gone? How will we continue his legacy of ridiculousness and surprise and making something out of nothing at every turn? And I miss you for all the things you still might say. What a marvel of a dad. He's impossible not to miss. We will be writing these remarks forever, our collections of details and moments, and yours. Dad's perfectly manicured gentleman hands, stable enough to hold overflowing cups without spilling, drawing perfect circles with no guide, palms forward in animation while in discussion. It would have never been enough, but it was. We had him, and it was glorious. We remember what he gave. Although he was the funniest, he brought out the funniest in all of us. Although he was the most brilliant, he brought out the most brilliant in all of us. He always said to surround yourself with greatness, but it was him that created the greatness around him. What happens when larger than life is gone? How will we create these moments that only he could? It takes a village to remember this one man. I asked him at the end how I could possibly ever explain him to anyone. He looked at me sideways with his incandescent eyes, without turning his head, and said, "Good luck."
Everyone loved my dad. He truly enjoyed interacting with people. Friends, colleagues, total strangers. I found it incredibly annoying. Taking him out to eat was more like watching him hang out with the entire restaurant. At the movies, they would tear his ticket and hand it to him. He would tear it again and hand it right back. We haven't gone back to his favorite restaurants. We didn't have the heart to tell them he died. He would answer questions on any topic in great detail. I had no idea what he was talking about. I would say, "Dad, that is a very confusing explanation." He would say, "My students understand it." I would say, "Dad, I'm 5. He had sayings that stuck with me. When things get tough, you grit your teeth and keep going. Don't answer the riddle until you are sure. It takes hard work to make things look easy. Always listen to the other side. I spent half my life sitting with my dad. Sitting with him was the best activity you could do. As a kid, I had strategic insomnia. The middle of the night was the best time to find him. As an adult, I bought a house next to his so I could sit with him and my kids could sit with him. I would send a 2-year-old up to his office. She thought she was just playing a game. She would come back understanding colors, shapes, and numbers. Who will we sit with now? Who will teach our children curiosity and wonder? Are there any volunteers?
Well, now it's an opportunity for us to share with each other some of these stories and memories, and a chance to share with Dietz and her family our love. Some special treats are around. In honoring of Alex, my son Jonathan has some whiskey behind the fireplace, if you'd like to give that a taste. And in closing, as we open, let's thank Dietz and her family.